Welcome to our executive interview series at CyberTalks presented by CyberScoop. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here with Lamont Copeland, Senior Director, Federal Solutions at Verizon. Lamont, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Wyatt.
I'd like to start by asking, what are the biggest challenges that federal agencies are currently facing from your perspective in trying to defend against the expanding attack surface across their enterprises?
Yeah, no, thanks, Wyatt. And when you look at that attack surface, I mean, there's been a lot that's happened over the year with all the different things that have been happening with security. If you look at that, I mean, about 180% of the attacks have come up raised over the year. So about since last year, about 180%. And what you see, about a third of those are ransomware and exploitations. That's where a lot of that is coming into play. And we're seeing like 9% of those attacks are pure extortion attacks. And when you look at that extortion, that's just pure data being stolen and then using that to do different type of extortions, and then different things to different agencies and different companies along the way. And what we're seeing is like 92% of industries are dealing with this ransomware and also the exploitation deals. And a lot of this stems from where you look at it with how the infrastructure is being set up and how we're understanding how all the things are being mapped and used together. There's a lot of things that when you look at the attack surface, it's spread across the world, across the globe. When you're looking at this, you're looking at devices that are at the edge, you're looking at data that's being moved from place to place. And it's understanding where all these things are placed in today and how do you then protect against each one of those things? How do I protect against the devices? How do I protect against the data that's being moved across the world? How do I protect against things that are even resonant there and how they all interrelate to one another? And that's where a lot of those challenges are that we're trying to help with when we're looking at these different statistics of where we're seeing the rise in ransomware and rise in these attack surfaces, is because that surface is spreading across the world. And how do we then protect each one of those different things? And one of the things that we're trying to recommend to a lot of our agencies and a lot of the customers that we work with is getting that understanding of what your inventory is, where all the data is residing, where all the users are, how do your credentials all tie to one another, what are all the devices, both your mobility devices to your desktops, the laptops, the voice services, and how do they all interrelate to one another, and then tying a risk score associated with those things, because a lot of that is going to be then the start of your attack plan of how you would then start trying to protect that surface, how do you protect all the different assets that you have across the board. And that even goes down to the encryption level too as well. I mean, if you're looking at it today, we have to start looking at how do we protect what does our encryption profile look like too as well across each one of those devices, because if you just look, NIST just released their standards to try to get prepared for the potential quantum threat that's going to be coming here in the future. I mean, they just released FIPS 201, 202, 203 to be able to say, okay, how do we start changing the encryption profile so we protect all of the data that we have? So a lot of it's now just trying to understand our attack surface and then getting a really good understanding at the interrelationship between those things. And then how do we then start tying a risk score to those things so that we can then start trying to build what would be the next way to then move into protection of those. Which then leads me to the next point of then all these things are running over legacy type technology. We're still working through the government today, as much as the work effort has been through, we're still trying to get out some of that legacy technology, which helps with that attack, those attack vectors that bad actors are trying to exploit. How do I get rid of the TDM services that are inside of the network so that you can then get to more modernized networking capabilities? How do I then get rid of antiquated servers, bad software that's associated with that? And how do I make sure that we're actually moving these things into the next phase of what's the next technology that we should be there so we can better protect that technology and use the latest and greatest technology to be able to support that, because it's really hard to try and protect older data because there's a supply chain issue with those, trying to make sure you have the right technology there. There's also an issue with talent that's going to be able to support some of these legacy capabilities. How do you make sure that, okay, let's manage and migrate those things there? But when you build that inventory and those risk profiles, you then can build up an attack plan to figure out how do you then get there step by step versus trying to do it all at once. Because we know this is a journey. It's not something that you do one and done and get it all done at one time. You're set to go, and you can't do it all at once. We just heard downstairs that there's a budgeting issue that we're going to have to work through. How do you then start prioritizing with that risk profile? I can go here because this is my most highly risked area that I need to make sure that's protected, and then start working your way out so that you can then continue to then iterate across this within the budgeting cycle. And then that ties back into then once you get rid of some of this antiquated technology and you start working through that, how do you then bring up the talent that's associated with that and working together with industry to be able to then build in the protection measures that are necessary there? Because what's necessary there is how do we work with public sector and private sector to bring the right people with the right technology together to be able to then protect that network. And a lot of that is, I'm not going to be able to get someone that knows how to program Fortran. That's something that's a long way away. It's something no one knows how to do anymore. But a lot of people know how to program C. They know how to program web applications. They know how to then tie those to the APIs that are associated with the network. So once you get all these things, you move the technology with the understanding of what your inventory is and the risk associated with that, with the talent of the people, then you start building that protection ecosystem that will then help reduce those numbers that we just talked about previously with the ransomware and all those exploitation areas.
Some great points, and in particular, the importance of congressional funding to keep this moving, to keep up with the pace of cyber threats. Let me ask again, secondly, how do you see the continued attention around artificial intelligence and generative AI impacting federal agencies and their cybersecurity planning, heading into this new fiscal year?
Yeah, and we really need to look at how AI is going to be used to build more of that intelligence and knowledge and actionable things that are necessary for the protection of the cyber assets. But what I need to first look at is what's that return on investment? What are the end missions that we're going to be trying to do? What's the question we're trying to ask and solve for? So that then you can then bring the right type of AI and the right type of data to be able to then support what you're looking to do. Because if you look at it, the AI landscape and the AI conversation is broad. We all want to have an AI strategy. We all know that you need to have an AI strategy and how you're going to leverage that into your environment to protect what's happening today. And to do that, you got to say, okay, what's that end mission? And then start stepping back. Okay, what is it that I want to accomplish? What are the assets that I need? And then what are all the support agencies that need to be associated with that? Because you're going to look at data sets that you have, data sets that your partners will have, and how do you marry those things together? And then what you want to take from there is then how do I then want to leverage that AI and the AI insights that we get into the actions that we want to do? Or to use it to advise our people that are protecting the network? Are we going to say, hey, listen, Mr. Copeland, I want to make sure that you are seeing, there's attack surfaces here, there's attack surfaces here, we're seeing threats happening here, and then let you work that. So there's an advisory part of that. Or do you want to have it augment that, where you then say, maybe there's some automation that's going to work, but it's going to work in tandem with what you're trying to do from a standpoint as a cyber technician to be able to work that, or cyber engineer to be able to work the changes in environment. And then there's also the, or would you do it into an automation? Because that's another part you got to look at is AI is a great way for speed and knowledge at the same time to be able to say, hey, I understand that there's a threat that's happening somewhere across the globe, which will then attack something maybe here inside of the US. And I can automatically start then seeing that threat is and taking that and tying that into automated actions to be able to update firewall instances, update SIEM instances, get MDRs to be able to do different detection and get ready to protect that network. So those are kind of some of the things you want to look at with how do you AI, how do you leverage it from what's that end mission, and then working backwards to be able to bring all those things together.
Well, Lamont Copeland, thank you so much for joining us here at CyberTalks and sharing some of your insights on cybersecurity.
All right, thank you very much for that.